What is up, guys? It's Skill up here with the weekly vendor reset video. I hope you're doing well. The year 2 announcement is upon us, and while it isn't everything we hoped, at least we have some damn good stuff this week in the weekly vendor reset. Guys, don't forget to check the timestamps in the description below so you can jump back and forward as you please. Drop the video a like if you like it, because it does help me out in a very, very big way. And with that, let's get straight into the video. At the weapons vendor this week, there is a MP5 ST here. Now this one's very good because you can put one of the VX type scopes on it, which is great for headshot damage. This one is particularly good with the defense gear set. This is generally speaking the SMG that you'd want to be using with that build. The talents are determined, predatory, and dominant. Rollaway dominant because it is terrible and the rest of it isn't so bad. At the gear vendor this week, there's a electronics mod here that's rolled base electronics 250, pretty solid roll, and also 1% critical hit chance, which is the max roll because it's the only roll. Can't really see many circumstances where you'd want to be stacking both electronics and crit at the same time, but if you do, there it is for you. At the Dark Zone gear vendor this week, there's a prototype performance mod. This one has rolled for ballistic shield damage resilience 4.5% out of 5%. This mod reduces your damage taken when you have your shield out, and that is if you get shot from the side or behind, it will reduce your damage taken. It's particularly strong in PvP, where you will often get flanked and you'll be taking damage from the side or from behind. At the advanced weaponry vendor this week, nothing too exciting. We've got a Scar L here with Adept, Ferocious, and Responsive, particularly good for PvE, obviously. If you were looking at using this in PvP, though, you'd simply change out that Ferocious for something else. Scar L is a very sort of mid-tier assault rifle, very easy to use though, good recoil profile, feels a lot like the Caduceus because it's actually the same weapon. Yeah, quite solid, nothing special though. You'd typically go for a lightweight M4 or at a LVOA-C, which we'll talk about in a moment. There's also this M700 Carbon. It's got cool-headed and elevated on it. Sustained is not what you want, get rid of that. Cool-headed is actually not good on this thing though, purely because it's so slow. It's a bolt action. You'd really want cool-headed on something like the Scar H, because that's just got that faster rate of fire, or an M1A or an SVD, not the bolt action type. Finally, we've got a military MK46 here. This is rolled for Adept, Unforgiving, and Meticulous. I don't think Meticulous is required on these belt-fed weapons because they've just got so many bullets as it is. Unforgiving is quite good though, because if you're using it in PvE with these long patterns of fire, you'll typically be taking damage. You'll start to deal more damage with time, and obviously Adept we spoke about a while ago. It's good, obviously. It's particularly good if you're stacking lots of skill power and you have quicker sort of timers on your cooldowns, but otherwise you may want to roll it away for something else. So it's quite situational, this one, but check it out if you need it. And finally, there's also an extended magazine here. It's got 110% magazine size, which is near the top range of the roll after they've adjusted it for patch 1.6. It's got reload speed, which is fairly inconsequential, and rate of fire, which is the best secondary stat that you can get on an extended magazine. So this is probably one of the best extended mags that you are going to be able to get your hands on in this patch. So do check yours to see if this is an upgrade. It's a very high chance that it will be. At the special equipment vendor this week, we have our exotic weapons as per normal. The talents on these always reset every week, so we'll talk through them very quickly. We've got a Liberator here with Responsive and Prepared and Adept. Obviously, you got to get rid of one of these. I'd get rid of Prepared because 30 meters is a bit too much for a Liberator. For an M4, they sort of become too difficult to manage at that range. Responsive is obviously great, particularly in PvP, and Adept is good, as I said, in PvP especially. The Pecan this week is quite good because it's actually rolled a combination of Meticulous as well as the Pecan talent, which means that you don't need to reload this thing very often. You just keep pulling the trigger and your magazine just keeps getting bigger and bigger over time when you do eventually reload it. Capable is unrequired. You just completely get rid of that. Totally wasted. But yeah, this week better roll than usual. This Cassidy has got Swift, which is quite useful because you spend a lot of time reloading this thing. Ferocious, great for PvE, and the Boomstick talent, obviously. The Centurion this week has got Competent on it, no big deal. And finally, this Historian's actually quite good. This has Competent as well. If you can hit the electronics requirement, you're probably doing it wrong in the sense that, you're meant to stack a lot of firearms with this, and you're probably not going to hit the 3800 threshold. You might, but generally not. Determined is actually quite good though, because you're going to be stacking lots of firearms, your electronics is going to be low, your cooldowns are going to be long, so having this on there is useful. And then we have that history repeats. This is a sort of mid-tier combination of talents. You definitely have to get rid of this competent though, because you're not going to hit that 3800 threshold. This Marine Super 90 isn't too shabby. It's got Unforgiving, which is great because you will be taking damage with this thing, given you're using it up close. Sustained is not fantastic. I would roll that away. And Brutal is quite good on a shotgun because it is pretty easy to line up your headshots. So not a bad weapon for PvE. And finally, this classic M60 here has rolled Predatory and Sustained, as well as Deadly. You'd get rid of Deadly in that third slot, and if you want a really sustain-focused weapon, you may want to go for something like Self-Preserved and maybe stack a bit of crit on this thing to really keep yourself nice and topped up. This Striker's Mask is quite good. The base stamina roll is low, however, it does have base enemy armor damage, which means you could reroll either the minor attribute or the major, so that's nice. Similar with this Mask of the Nomad, very low firearms roll here, but it does have base enemy armor damage and burn resistance, which is probably the best resistance that you can take into PvP. These Sentry's Call knee pads are excellent. They've got 1268 here in firearms out of a max of 1270. They've got a base health roll, which is what you'd want on the knee pads, and they also have damage to elites, which is what you'd want if you're using them in PvE, and most people are going to be using Sentry's Call in PvE more than anything else. So fantastic roll on these. Definitely check your own, see if they're an upgrade. And there's also a Nimble holster here. Nimble is that really good holster that heals you when you move cover to cover. It's got 1200 across all three stats, which is very solid, and it's got 4% critical hit chance, which is quite good, but you could roll anything else on there. There are a number of other options that are all quite viable. A very strong holster this week. There's also this extended magazine. It is slightly better than the one upstairs. However, it does cost Phoenix credits, whereas the other one costs normal credits. So that's why I've included both of them in this video. Ladies and gentlemen, get your MLG horns ready. We finally have the lightweight M4 blueprint in the house. There it is. You can purchase it right now. This obviously is one of the most sought after blueprints, if not the most sought after in fact, because the lightweight M4 is a bit of a go-to weapon in both PvE and PvP. My advice is to buy this thing and then craft a whole bucket load of them to get the best possible talent combination that you are chasing. There's also a surplus SVD as well, which is one of the best marksman rifles that you can get because it is just like crazy stable, and if you haven't tried an SVD lately, give it a go and you'll see how powerful it is. It doesn't hit as hard as other marksman rifles, but you can fire so fast and so accurately that it really doesn't matter. There's also a firearms backpack stamina vest. A small grip red blueprint is actually also excellent. This is the best DPS focused underbarrel grip that you can get because it rolls critical hit damage. This is the one that you want if you're looking to maximize your DPS. So pick that up as well if you need it. At the Autumn's Hope safe house this week, we have an electronics mod that's rolled base electronics 246 mid-tier roll and 2896 electronics, which is definitely on the low side. Not a great mod, but if you're looking for a combination of both base electronics and skill power, that's the one you need. At the Wolves Den safe house, there is an LVOA-C here. Now this one is 22% armor damage, strong roll there. The per bullet damage is on the low side, so do check that out yourself, see if yours is better. It's got Fierce, which is okay, but it does have a fairly high electronics requirement, so you probably have to roll this one away. Unforgiving, fantastic talent for PvP, but generally fairly good. And finally, Destructive, which is an excellent top tier talent in PvE, but decidedly less strong in PvP because people are stacking less armor and you only get 1/3 the value of it in the PvP damage calculation. So this actually gets reduced down to 5%. Regardless, it's pretty strong. I suspect most of you will probably have a better LVOA-C already. My advice, actually buy the blueprint back at the base and then craft a whole bunch of M4s because they're basically the same as the LVOA and you can get a better combination of talents than this. At the Dante's Run safe house, there is a prototype performance mod that's rolled for first aid self-heal 5.5% out of 6%. Unquestionably one of the best solo mods that you can run with, given the fact that heal has been significantly nerfed unless you are stacking very high amounts of electronics. At the Kerman Station safe house, there is a custom L86 A2 here, 12% enemy damage out of cover, nothing special. Self-preserved, it's okay, but you do need to be stacking crit on this thing, which I probably probably wouldn't recommend. Swift is not so bad on this because you actually do spend a fair amount of time reloading, and Brutal is one of the best talents that you can take with an LMG because you're typically using them in PvE and you're typically aiming for the head a lot. This weapon is pretty much only going to be usable for you if you are using the Lone Star build, given the fact that basically LMGs just don't hit hard enough as compared to something like an assault rifle, a LVOA or an M4. If you are running Lone Star, pick this up. Otherwise, I'd recommend giving it a miss. At Camp Hudson, there's a weapons vendor here, and this week he's selling a black market sausage. This one's got Swift, it's got Vicious, and it's got Brutal. Truth is, this is actually a pretty good roll. You will spend a lot of time reloading this, so Swift is useful, but you can roll it away. The other two talents are quite nice. Vicious, you're not actually going to be stacking a lot of crit with a shotgun, generally speaking, so it actually is quite useful to have this talent. And Brutal is great because you're typically using this, or you're always using this up close, and you can be landing plenty of headshots in PvE. In PvP, obviously much tougher. The sausage has got a sort of a new lease on life in the Last Stand game mode because people are figuring out how strong Stagger is, and you're seeing a lot of people running Striker. This will fire off 8 pellets at once when you fire it. If all of them hit, that's an immediate 8% damage. It stacks up really fast with that high rate of fire, plus it also staggers your enemy to no end. If you haven't tried it, give it a try. You're going to find it's very, very powerful. The only thing that really competes with this in terms of its stagger impact is the Showstopper, which obviously is a exotic weapon, much harder to get. At the Meat Locker Safe House, there is a Police T821. I'm sure many of you will look at and think, cool, responsive, that's great, determined, fantastic, sustained, meh, I'll re-roll it. Truth is, guys, the T821 is just a terrible, terrible SMG. It's absolutely the worst SMG that you can choose. It's got that RPM of 550, which just means it scales absolutely terribly with your gloves. If you're wearing SMG gloves, the slower weapons get way less value out of those versus the faster rate of fire weapons. And it also has a 32 mag, which is nothing particular. It's just not a great mag size either. So steer clear of this thing. It may look cool on paper, but it's not a good weapon. At the Madison's Stand Safe House this week, we've got a Firearms mod. It's rolled for a 232 out of a max of 260, which is definitely on the lower end of the spectrum. It's also rolled 3,000 bonus health, which is quite sort of mid-tier, but it's good enough. This is obviously a good combination of stats. Most people are going to want to run health in that major attribute slot. You may want to run skill power depending on your build, but health is a bit of a go-to, and if you're running firearms mods, then this will do the trick. At the East 53rd Street DZ checkpoint, we have ourselves a nice operator mask here. It's 1264 electronics, max roll there. Refreshed is really nice. It's all healing is improved by 30% when in the last health segment. A very popular, widely used talent for mask slot. And finally, we have critical hit chance and damage to elites on it, which makes it absolutely perfect for PvE. And you could obviously change it up and go something else in that minor attribute slot for PvP as well. So really, really strong roll on that one. Do have a look at it. At the East 42nd Street DZ checkpoint, absolutely fantastic tactical org here. 21.5% critical hit damage is solid. We've got Adept and Competent and Meticulous. Now, Adept might push you over the crit cap depending on how you're building yourself. In fact, there's a good chance that it will, so do be aware of that, particularly if you're running in your party with a strong pulse. This will almost certainly push you over the crit cap, so be aware. Competent, bonus damage when you use a skill, very nice. Meticulous, really not required with this thing, but it's third slot. Roll that for responsive, and it's an absolutely fantastic tactical org. We also have a prototype stamina mod here, 245 out of max of 267. Quite low roll, but it's also critical hit chance if you're looking to stack more crit into an SMG build while wearing some of the stamina mods. Cool, but generally speaking, don't wear stamina mods. They're not as efficient as wearing electronics mods, and firearms mods are obviously a bit of a requirement as well to help you hit some of your weapon talents. So yeah, my advice, steer clear of this one. At the East 34th Street DZ checkpoint, we've got a PP19 here. Unforgiving, great for PvP. Accurate, totally not required with this weapon. Get rid of it. And Hurried is actually perfect for this because basically it makes it one of the best throughput weapons in the game, in terms of like just how much damage it's doing over time. Certainly the best SMG for that, but also one of the best weapons in the game when you are using a PP19 with Hurried. It's just such a quick reload time and a really large magazine. It just handles beautifully. So yeah, my advice, guys, check it out. Do get rid of that accurate though. It's really not required. Prototype firearms mod here, also also 239, very low roll, and it's also got 2,879 skill power. Also a low roll, but if you need a combination of firearms and skill power, then there you have it. At the East 31st Street DZ checkpoint, there is a Seeker Mine Dmg Mod here. It's 4%, which is the max roll. Seeker Mine's obviously very popular in Last Stand, particularly if you're running the one-shot Seeker Mine build, which is very, very widely seen at the moment. This is the mod you are chasing. At the West 31st Street DZ checkpoint, we've got a custom or military L86 LSW. This one is rolled for Ferocious, Determined, and Skilled. Now, Determined and Skilled in combination make this an absolutely superb solo weapon. Skilled giving you back your signature skill really fast, and Determined giving you your regular abilities back really fast. And the L86 is perfect for Skilled as well because it's very accurate. It's very easy to get headshot kills with this thing. Obviously only in PvE we're talking about here. So my advice, if you're running a hybrid build that's going to hit all three of these, leave Ferocious on there. Otherwise, maybe get rid of that and replace it with something like Brutal, and it's a really perfectly rolled DPS focused weapon if you're looking to play solo and keep maximum uptime on your abilities and your signature skills. At the West 34th Street DZ checkpoint, there's another sausage here. This one here has a 347% stagger, which is a good roll. Unforgiving, great for PvP. Swift, not bad on this weapon. And also accurate is quite nice, given the fact that they do have some reticle bloom. This is pretty nice indeed. So it's not a fantastic roll on this thing. It's missing damage-focused stats like responsive or perhaps brutal, but it's not terrible either, so have a look at it. And there's also a Ballistic Shield health mod here, 7.5%, which is actually the max roll on that. This is generally the mod that you want to go with if you're looking to do serious PvE content, like legendary difficulty or heroic. Even if you're stacking lots and lots of electronics, your shield is still going to get melted pretty fast, particularly in legendary difficulty. So my advice is pack a few of those into your gear, going to make it a hell of a lot easier. At the West 39th Street DZ checkpoint, we do have a pair of tactical gloves. They are savage, however the firearms roll is particularly low and they have skill haste on them, which means you're going to probably need to roll those away to something else. They are SMG and crit hit chance, which is quite good. It's kind of exactly the combination that you'd want. So roll that away for something like critical hit damage, and while the firearm stat is very low, at least it hits all of the requirements in terms of what you'd want for an SMG pair of savage gloves. At the West 53rd Street DZ checkpoint, there's an operator mask here with Rehabilitated. It's got 1255 stamina, which is a fairly strong roll. It rolls at a max of 1270. Rehabilitated heals you during status effects, which is very nice during Last Stand because there are plenty of status effects being thrown around. It's got enemy armor damage base, which is not good for PvP in the sense that on this level or this amount it's really small. You may want to roll that away to something else. It's got blind def resistance, which is also a fairly weak resistance to have. This is not the best operator mask, but it is rehabilitated with a strong stamina roll, so it could fit your build. There's also a prototype electronics mod here, 250 out of a max of 267, sort of mid-tier, and the health roll is quite strong though, 3,192. Not bad. At the East 58th Street DZ checkpoint, it's one of the new ones in the DZ North area. We've got ourselves an operator mask here. It's 1224 electronics, quite strong. Tenacious actually gives you more damage when you use a med kit, so it's actually very, very good. And a little bit sort of underrepresented. Most people aren't running this, but it is very strong in PvP. It's got skill power roll, which is quite low here, but still skill power plus electronics is what you want. And finally, disorient resistance, which you could redo to something like bleed or fire resistance. At the DZ3 checkpoint, the guy that sells the weapons this week, we have a beautifully rolled Vector. It's rolled competent, determined, and brutal. Determined obviously makes this a very PvE focused weapon. Change it out for something like responsive if you're going to be using it in PvP, and it does become pretty damn strong. A really fantastic combination of talents, and the Vector still one of the best SMGs you can get your hands on. Very, very nice. And there's also another Super 90 shotgun here. This one has rolled responsive and predatory, both of them fantastic for shotguns. This capable, totally unrequired, but that means your third slot is free for anything else. Something like brutal would work extremely well, or perhaps unforgiving if you're using it in PvP. And that's it, guys. That's the weekly vendor reset for the week. Some of the gear was pretty great, but obviously the blueprints were the highlight. Being able to craft ourselves an M4 or an SVD is very, very handy. So do start collecting those materials or deconstructing some of your weapons in order to be able to do that. Guys, if you liked the video and you found it useful, do drop it a like and be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm still going to be doing Division videos in the future, so do stick around for those. Thank you very much for watching. Take good care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.